Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dan Nessel Show. I'm your host, Dan Nessel. Today I am struck by the kind of exuberance of my guest, I'll say. And that's because, a couple weeks ago, I had a fellow on named Mike O'Neill on my podcast. He's a legend in LinkedIn because he is. He was on since 2002, 2003, 2003-ish, around the same time I've been on. But he's really made a life of it, a business of. He's the first business coach, first LinkedIn coach ever, the first person to really dig into how to build your business on LinkedIn. And now he's really deep into the guts of Sales Navigator, right? So in that sense, he's been doing it for so long, he's a legend. But then comes along my guest today. And, a fellow that I met just recently, really, just over the last several months, but we connected on LinkedIn through mutual friends, but it wasn't until a little bit later, probably until the advent of Clubhouse, and we'll get to that too, where we actually connected by voice and had a chat and really sat down and really talked to each other. And now I'm going to reassess my whole thing about the legend, because my guest today is a legend in the making, if not already a legend. The new legend of LinkedIn, I'll call him Joel Lalgee. And if you haven't heard that name, by the way, Joel Lalgee, you certainly will. If you're on LinkedIn, I'm almost sure that you have a mutual connection with Joel. So Joel, Headhunter Supreme, LinkedIn Master, Clubhouse Moderator Extraordinaire. There's so many, superlatives I can give you. It is an honor for me to speak with you today, my friend. So thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to the show.
Man, great to be here. And it's funny because my handle on Clubhouse is LinkedIn Legend. I tried changing it on Instagram to LinkedIn Legend, but it was already taken. So now I think I'm maybe like the real LinkedIn Legend. I don't know. LinkedIn Legend is circling. And then I was checking the podcast a couple days ago, and I noticed you had Mike O'Neill, and he, the episode is LinkedIn Legend.
Yeah.
And it was okay. I was like, I checked his profile out, and he's definitely legendary. Yeah,
he's a real deal. Currently, probably living it up in Costa Rica. He's really taking advantage of the whole remote work thing.
I love that.
And, sometimes it's really nice to be untethered and be able to do that. Look, he said that he does owe it all to LinkedIn in a lot of ways, and in many ways, that's where you're at, right? You have come very far in a very short amount of time, primarily through your activities on LinkedIn. And it's not like you followed a playbook. You just kind of made it yours. And that's where I really want to dig in a little bit. Like, how did you do it, man? What's your journey? Like, how did you become this kind of, like I said, the new legend of LinkedIn, as if you will?
Yeah, man. It's I think a lot of it started for me just out of boredom. And so I'd been in the recruitment space, or I am in the recruitment space, but I was on the recruitment, like third party headhunter agency world. And so I've been on LinkedIn for a long time. I think I signed up in 2011, but really got into it in 2014, more on the LinkedIn recruiter side. So, I was that classic guy showing up in the inbox, got a new opportunity. Are you open to something new? And I think when the advent of video came along on LinkedIn, I'd kind of noticed that content had been just changing, really, and the dynamics of LinkedIn had been changing. And I had a friend actually I used to work with her, and she was one of the first like LinkedIn video creators. And I just would see her videos, and she'd be getting like 1 million views. So it was like,
is that Shay Rowbottom by chance?
No, it wasn't. This is probably 3 years before Shay Rowbottom. So this was like right when LinkedIn video came out. It's a girl called Nicole McAndrew. And so she doesn't even create anything on LinkedIn anymore. It actually got kind of overwhelming for her. But that was kind of like my first, just kind of seeing, LinkedIn content popping up. And to be honest with you, I was in the recruitment role. I would go on LinkedIn, the newsfeed, when I was just kind of bored of sourcing people and kind of doing the day job. And honestly, I just started seeing like the posts, and I'd see posts with hundreds and thousands of likes and comments. And I just think to myself, this content, this written content doesn't really seem like that big of a deal. Like maybe I could do this myself. And so I just kind of out of boredom and just out of a sense of something, I wanted something else out of my job. It kind of got monotonous. Like I was working in the construction industry, so it was the same thing every day. I was recruiting for the same positions. And so I just released a video, got some sympathy likes, got a couple people comment. I tagged a lot of people. I realized you could tag people, and I was like, oh wow, I could tag anyone. And so I actually tagged an influencer, and she was really gracious and said, hey, I love the video. And subsequently I tagged her like 5 times afterward, and she never responded again. But I don't know. I realized I realized oh, you can reach people, this video stuff. You can put yourself out there. I wasn't on any other social media, so I wasn't on Facebook, wasn't on Instagram. I think about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I watched I think it's like Cal Newton, I want to say, like he had a TED talk, and he was just like, social media is a waste of time. Like it's a time waster. It's designed, it's by design, it's there for entertainment, and it's masked as communication, but really it's there for entertainment. And at that point, I had quit everything. I quit all social media, and I was only on LinkedIn because of work. So it wasn't like I came in with this idea of I'm going to brand myself or I'm going to use content to get my business name out there. It was literally out of, this looks interesting. Maybe I'll try it.
So there's no plan? You didn't have like
there was zero plan, man.
You didn't have like a personal brand plan, a content plan?
I didn't even know what a personal brand was.
Known? Yeah.
I didn't know what content was. I'm not marketing, but by my degrees in business and finance. So I took some marketing courses, but yeah, it was 2011, so they weren't even really talking about social media really at that time. The recruitment world, which I serve now, actually teaching people how to do basically LinkedIn content to build their own brand. The recruiting world's antiquated. I mean, it's all outbound, so nobody's training you on anything marketing related. So yeah, I think that's where, for me, that's kind of like why I probably have been somewhat successful, is because, like you said before, I don't have a playbook. Like I never had a plan, and that can be an advantage because then you have to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah. You know, sometimes we hear a lot about, hey, this is what you need to do. You need to do this kind of stuff on LinkedIn. If you want to build your brand, you have to do a certain amount of content, a certain amount of things. And, there's all these people who have these different rules and these different codes to live by. And, look, some of it really does work if you really sit there and you work at it and you make it happen. I'm sure it works for tons and tons of people. Yeah. And very few, I think, of those people. I mean, I tend to kind of trust a little bit for, a lot of the experts that I know anyway. And, they're giving advice and almost instruction booklets in some way, like playbooks out of the best place from their heart, with the best of intentions, really want to help people to uplift themselves. And of course it helps them in their own businesses as well. There's some self-interest there, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just seems to make sense to just, take that body of knowledge, the conventional wisdom almost, and just say, screw it, I'm doing it differently. I don't have to think about that stuff. I just want to be me. And
exactly
what you did, you said something really interesting, even in just one of the very first things you said, written content didn't seem like a big deal. You know how many people would agree with you? Like a handful, like almost none. Written content, I think, to so many people feels like a massive obstacle. Like, okay, to write a quick post, most people would agree is an easy thing, right? But to write a post with the purpose of actually, getting followers or something, it starts to play with your brain.
Yeah,
it starts to play with your attitude, with your whole conception of, holy crap, am I able to do this? And then when you start to say, I'm going to put out content, I'm going to start writing things because, look, I know a thing or two, and I think I have something valuable to say. That requires a leap of mindset to so many people. And, some people call it, imposter syndrome, where you feel like you don't have the credibility or you don't have the license to operate almost. But you kind of laughed in the face of that, didn't you?
I don't even think I laughed, and I just don't think I recognized that as a thing. Like I didn't, because I didn't go in there making it a thing. And I think a lot of people, they get caught up in these buzzwords like value. Like value is such a buzzword where everybody said, well, you got to bring value to your audience. And the problem is you never really define what that value is.
Mhm.
And then a lot of times things that are really basic within your own mind are actually highly valuable to other people. And so you're always going to downplay the inherent value that you bring because to you it is just easy and it comes to you naturally. And so things can really seem basic to you, but for other people, it could be, revelatory. Like it could be a new revelation for them. And again, for you, it's just, oh, yeah, this is easy. And so I think because it was never a thing, I never set out there for the personal brand. That's why it worked. And then I think the other piece that tied in, which initially, again, this is something I would teach people to do now, or I'd advise people to do, but it was
Mhm.
just a natural occurrence. I started having conversations with people offline and like people who
Yeah.
they might not have even been potential business opportunities or potential clients. And I'm in recruiting, so I've had a lot of conversations with candidates, but these were non-recruiting and non-candidate conversations.
Mhm.
It was just conversations. And I think
About when did you start doing that?
it would have been September 2019,
So yeah, pretty recently.
pre-COVID,
Yeah.
just before Zoom was cool. I was having lots of Zooms, lots of conversations offline. And it's just interesting because I started to see that engagement then online, because people would go, "Oh, I know Joel. I had a conversation with him." And I think it allowed then for like a different type of authenticity to happen because it wasn't just an online persona or like something I was trying to be. It
Mhm.
just I realized like, oh, I can be the same person in my content that I can be offline, and that's like a superpower. And then I started attending the LinkedIn local events and like just getting in there with other content creators, building relationships within that LinkedIn community. And again, it'd be like I do a video and then we get offline or in a phone conversation. And I think it was a big deal for a lot of people that I was the same person because again, I think coming back to what we just talked about, it's like when you make it a thing to like be something online or be a thought leader or whatever these buzzwords are, it kind of puts a pressure on you that you have to show up in a certain way. And I think you want to bring value, right? And you want to for me though, the big value piece of it is like I want to be able to entertain people with everything that I
Mhm.
do. And when I mean entertain, it's like I want to capture their attention and I want to keep attention and then I want to share some of the insights that I do have. And it's as simple as that for me. Like it's not anything more. I don't feel a pressure of showing up in a certain way. And I think for
Mhm.
a lot of people though, there's huge pressure. And I think that's how we've made it though as well. And
Yeah.
that's how we make it with our corporate environments as well. And I think it's something that because LinkedIn's so tied into business. But there's a huge opportunity
Yeah.
with that as well. Because I think when a lot of people have fear, I said this the other day, like capitalize on the fear of other people. Like a lot of people are afraid because they're afraid of what their employer or they're afraid of what their client is going to say.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of that's irrational unless you're going to come out and just give something like massively political, obviously, or like
Right.
something controversial. I think a lot of that fear is
Yeah.
just like irrational and comes from just being super self-conscious, I guess, at the end of the day.
Yeah. But it seems like you started out without you for some reason didn't have a lot of the baggage that people start this journey
Exactly.
with.
Exactly.
And and so you just like did what I was advised to do, what it took years for me to figure out, and what it took incredible conversations with very, very, dear people to me to figure out, which is forget about value, you know, get out of your own way. You are your own worst enemy.
Exactly.
The value you have is your unique perspective, your voice, who you are. You've been in this world for however long you've been in this world. You have a perspective that's very different from every other person that's around. So if you can figure out a way to communicate that, right? Then you have nothing to fear. It's, it is unique, it is valuable. to somebody somewhere, And the other thing that really was an eye opener to me was just like, honestly, does it matter if people really respond to you and like you? I mean, what is the point of doing this? What's the point? Are you doing it because you want to be loved? Well, then it's the wrong game. Are you doing it because you have something important to say and you need to get it out there? Then do it, right? I mean, the results come but if you're doing it for results, I hope you're getting paid and you have a product designer and other things, because that's what, corporate people do. And, you're getting paid to get results, to use techniques and make things happen. But if it's your own stuff, bring your own value.
So you could probably hear my daughter in the background there.
And that is the coolest thing about you, Joel, is like this authenticity. I do not stop my podcasts for dogs, for kids, anything, because this is your life, right? We're not here to tell people how to operate on LinkedIn. We're here to tell people about Joel.
Well, and I think that to me, that is where I think number one, like detaching yourself from the results is huge, right? Mm-hmm. Detaching yourself from the likes, the vanity views, that was huge. And for me, like I said, it started out, I was bored. I wanted to express myself. I wanted to make an impact. Then it turned into connecting with people. Mm-hmm. I think now, like, I do care about the vanity metrics because for me, it's a great selling point. Like if I'm meeting with a recruitment, like a leader of a recruitment company, and I say, hey, I'm going to help your whole team with their personal brand. It is definitely a great selling point when I share my screen and I show them hundreds of thousands of views. It's a credibility. Sure. But I tell most people, like, it's not, it's like with this podcast, like, are you going to quit the podcast because this episode didn't get 50,000 downloads? No. And you didn't, and I don't get the sense that you started it out for it to be like, all right, the Joe Rogan show next week. And I think that to me indicates like you'll keep going past episode 35 and you'll go to episode 1000 because the intentions are right. And I think you have to get to that point if you're going to see content creation as a long-term thing. If you're going to see LinkedIn, I'm on TikTok as well. Like, do I want to be a TikTok influencer? No, but I'm on there because I want to understand like what's so magnetic about the platform. And I think that's something that I've discovered and something that I think I found is just a passion. It's like, I'm actually fascinated by like what keeps attention, how to keep attention. Mm-hmm. I'm fascinated by impact, what impacts people, what moves people. And, one of the earliest things that happened to me on LinkedIn was I shared a story, like it's actually a comment on somebody else's post. And the post went viral. And my comment happened to be the first comment that you saw, and it got a lot of attention. And basically the post that this person put out was like their comeback story. And it's a guy who's pretty well known on LinkedIn. He shared his comeback story and his struggles with mental health. And I shared my own story with mental health. And from that comment, I got 2 DMs from people that said, hey, my brother committed suicide. And it's just like this woman who just like opened her own heart. And again, I hadn't been on social media for a couple of years. And at that moment, I was like, oh, you can make an impact. And so a lot of these things were like happening. And it's like you make an impact, you're connecting with people. And then I found like, oh, I actually enjoy writing. I enjoy this stuff too. And I have fun with it. And so to me, like if you find something that you're passionate about that makes impact and you have fun, it's now what I'm trying to do is package that into something that provides my income, and again, for me, like being in recruitment, like recruiting is a super lucrative industry. You make a lot of money as an individual contributor. If you're a good recruiter, you're going to do well financially. But I think for me, like I realized too, like financial motivation isn't enough. Like it's impact, and I've got to enjoy what I'm doing. Sure. And so now I'm taking my love for LinkedIn and content and I'm packaging it in a way where it can support me. And that's just been huge for like my life in general. And, it's like you can hear I got young kids. So I'm the only guy that's putting food on the table in this house. But I recognize like if I want to be successful long term, like money's a piece of it. but
Sure.
impact is also a piece. Enjoying like what I do is a piece of it as well.
You're really fortunate because it sounds like you're hitting on, the whole idea of fulfillment and purpose. And, when you find your purpose, and you can, it sounds to me that's about bringing impact to others through the content that you're delivering, and through through the interactions and the connections that you're building and making. And this shifts over time. It's fine. But right now, because you're able to do that, it's sort of natural that you're pivoting in that direction. Then kind of the way to make a living out of that is coming after. It's following this. You're following what you know is working to build the connections that are meaningful to you. So you're able to, I think, design your future, your financial future, your job, as it were, following that, which is really, a kind of, it's what a lot of people hope for and dream of. So, hey, well done, Joel. It's really amazing to see what you've done just even this last year or two. As you said, you started, just before COVID with this whole idea of, what, LinkedIn is interesting to me, and you know, I'm just writing what I want to write, and people are responding. And you know what? Maybe there's another element to this, which is, what if I actually talk to people outside of the social network in real life? My goodness, what a masterstroke, right? So that kind of brings you to, starting to build this really, big following. And, you say that it's been, it's been a combination of the work you're doing on LinkedIn and this offline part of it. How big is this offline part, and what do you actually, get from these, or give or and get from the relationships that you're building on the in real life part of this?
It's a great question. I think, I know we got connected through Billy, right? So
Yeah.
Billy Samoa. So we're both on his podcast. So I think for me, that's what I learned, right? Like I'd always heard like your network is your net worth. Like we hear that a lot.
Mhm.
And I think like networking events locally for me were terrible because I'd go into the corner and like I'm kind of like I'm somebody that likes to get deep really quick with people. And it's really hard to do that with like traditional networking where you go to
Yep.
an event and it's like, who do you work for? And it's basically like, are you more important than me? If I'm more important, I don't even want to talk to you. So you kind of like have to prove like your importance to something or who you connected to.
Yeah.
I think for me, like I found on LinkedIn that it's like an online networking event. So if you have the ability to make a connection online through engagement or through DMs, take that offline, you can build a meaningful connection. And so what that's allowed me to do is just even in a short amount of time. I mean, you figure it's coming up to 2 years, or a year and a half to 2 years. In that short amount of time, it's opened up doors for the business that I'm involved in right now and the business collaborations that I've involved in. It's opened up doors for multiple podcasts, multiple collaborations in terms of social media, but it's ended up opening up tons of doors for me business-wise as well. So I get daily referrals for recruitment opportunities, even though I'm not in recruitment, but a lot of the clients that I work with are recruiters. So it's like I'm able to give them those leads, which increases the chance of them wanting to do business with me on the training side of how to do LinkedIn. And then also like anytime, like today, I got a message from someone saying from a podcast I did last week, which is this hat that I'm wearing, Be Authentic. It was a Be Authentic podcast. And somebody reached out and said, hey, Ryan from the Be Authentic podcast told me I should reach out to you. And this person's the exact type of person that I'd want to connect with and sell to. And so I think, when I look at like networking, and you see this in Clubhouse, like Clubhouse is a great way to like do this. Like you can kind of see who invited who and who's connected to who. And you start to realize like you're pretty much like maybe 2 to 3 degrees away from anybody. And
Sure.
and so the more people that you can know in that type of way and build relationships with or start relationships with, the more you're going to see you're going to see the fruit. I think if you're out there though intentionally looking for that, you kind of miss it. Like it has to always come from like that point of like, hey, I actually want to meet you. I want to get to know you as a person. And I think that is really actually tricky for people. And so it's switching the mindset of, like you said, like, what are you going to get or what are you going to give? That's kind of transactional. I just think like you've got to have that genuine mindset of like, I want to get to know this person for who they are. And Yeah. So it's really, I don't know. Like, what do I get out of it? I mean, I just love meeting with people, to be honest with you. That was enough originally. Now I'm starting to see the fruits from that. And so then it kind of feeds into the system.
Yeah.
And, Clubhouse is a really unique revelation with that as well, because, when I think of Clubhouse, it's audio app only. This followers, but like I'm convinced that followership doesn't matter. I'm convinced like it still comes down to like connection. And what I mean by that is like you can sit in a room that has 1,000 people come through it and pick up followers all day. Um, but just like on LinkedIn, like you don't want people to follow you because you told them to follow you. Like the worst thing in social media you can do is have a call to action that says follow me. It's
Yeah.
stupid. Like what you want is you want people to hopefully see your content multiple times so they get a full flavor of who you are, and then they click follow. It's like
Yeah.
it's the idea of like if you go viral on something but it's not a representation of who you are, you can build up 1 million followers. It doesn't have much power if they're not engaged with like who you actually are.
Yeah.
And so I think like on LinkedIn, like when I first started really creating content, there were people who had 6,000 followers, and I had 10,000 when I really started creating content because I just connected with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those people grew like in 6 months, they grew to 80,000 followers because there were these follow trees and these follow things. When I look at their content now, they struggle to get 6 or 7 likes on their posts. And it's because they like were asking too much, like follow me, as if like followership is a key, and it's not. It's never going to be a key in an audience. It's like it's always going to be engagement and connection to that audience, whether it's 5 people or 5,000. And if I would say it actually is a bad thing if you got a big audience, but they're not really connected to your message.
Right.
And I think we'll see that on Clubhouse. I think there's people right now who I'm seeing them before my eyes, like they're getting 20,000 followers, but they don't really have much to say. And I'm
Well,
like,
absolutely. I mean,
what's that going to be like?
all that's achieving is people getting dinged whenever you enter a room or something. There's an annoyance
Exactly.
factor to it. We'll get to Clubhouse in a minute. I mean, for sure. But just back to LinkedIn and that activity for a second. What is your follower number now? Just out of curiosity. Like, I mean, the followers or your network, your connection.
So I just hit 48,000.
Okay.
But it's like that is rapidly increasing now.
It does. It grows like kind of in a
Kind of compounds.
Yeah, and it bounces. Yeah, yeah. And I know that the different networks and the different activities that you do feed on each other and everything like that. But you know, the whole idea of something you said even a few minutes ago, where if you're in it to get followers or you're in it to get something from people, you can blow out your network fast. Anybody can get 5,000, 10,000 followers.
Easy.
Or
I say LinkedIn's
connections.
probably the easiest place to do that, by the way.
I think it is now. And well, I don't know. We might have passed that point a little bit. It's easy to get what I call low quality connections, but I don't mean that as a comment on the people themselves. I mean, that's a comment on, how relevant that connection is.
Well, it's like back in the day when you had the Lions. You remember the LinkedIn Open Networkers?
LinkedIn, of course.
And then that was just like you could just go into the LinkedIn Open Networking group and walk away with 500 connections.
Well, just to play devil's advocate there, in the earliest days of LinkedIn, and we're talking 2003, 2004, right?
Yep.
I was on LinkedIn.
The Mike O'Neill days, we call this.
The Mike O'Neill days. Let's call them the Mike O'Neill days, even though I preceded him by a little while. But I never jumped into LinkedIn like, okay, this is what I'm going to be, right? But I've been a big LinkedIn user and a big fan and everything. It's been open on my desktop, I think, every single day that I've had a computer open for almost 20 years. So, look, LinkedIn, if you're listening to this, I'm not asking for a reward, just a little love. But anyway, the whole idea about LinkedIn, in those early days was when it popped up, all of the early adopters for the other social networks were instantly on LinkedIn. So I was involved with something called Ecademy, which doesn't really exist anymore. Ecademy was this sort of knit together homegrown social network at the time. Even they weren't even calling it social media. The social network, it was built by this group of folks in the UK. It was an excellent platform, honestly, and it's a little ahead of its time. Great way to share content. Every member got essentially their own blog. And this is before Facebook, before any of this stuff. LinkedIn came around, and some people got invites to LinkedIn. That means everybody in the academy then got invited to LinkedIn, right? Because it was a smallish group.
Yeah.
There's a guy named Thomas Power who you might recognize that name. He's everywhere.
Yeah.
He started the academy. So anyway, the same people get pulled over to LinkedIn. That's how I got into LinkedIn. So you instantly start LinkedIn with whatever is 500-600 connections, however many they are, right? From that crowd. Now, I didn't know all those people, and I still probably don't have never met most of them. But we do share some very, unique characteristics of being the earliest adopters of social media and social networks, right? So, yeah, I mean, maybe in today's world, like now, I wouldn't have connected with them and they wouldn't have found me, whatever. But back then, we shared that in common. So it's like you're coming through this period of time where, then you put like Lion next to your profile. And again, we're talking long, long time ago, the kind of people that were coming through at that time were all like, so, well, not all, but so many of them were predisposed to being, early adopters in social, a lot of wonderful people, and some big names out there connected with me 20 years ago. You know, I don't really know them. I still don't really know them well, but if I go to a conference, and I come across this person, I'm like, holy cow, I've been following you for 18 years.
Hmm.
We've been connected. We're first degree connections. And they'd be like, oh, yeah, that's interesting. And then they'd move on to their next person, right? I mean, it's not that I get anything from it, but those early days of the Lions,
Yeah.
was kind of interesting, but it lost its shine really fast. It did, right? It
Yeah.
really did. But I'll tell you, like, there's some people out there who I've been connected to for like 18, like Mark Schaefer. Like Mark Schaefer is a legend. I am absolutely head over. If I had to be head over heels with an author and a marketing guru, it's Mark Schaefer. And I know him now after spending some time with him at some conferences, and we're connected. And first name basis, all great. But it took like 16 years from the first time I connected with him to the time I met him. And I think that was because of those early heady days of LinkedIn. So just a little bit of.
Well, it's interesting too, because I think like, I know we're gonna get to Clubhouse, but I did a tweet about this the other day too, and it's just like you cannot hack. There's no growth hack for like relationship building, and I think like true relationship building. You meet somebody. It's not like you just have like a super strong relationship. It's not like you even really know them. It actually could take years to know people, and I know like there's that Seinfeld episode where it's like no one makes new friends after 30, and it's kind of the truth, it's like when like, but I think like that to me is actually really what's really ironic about something like Clubhouse. It's like people are like talking about it like it's like the key to like quick relationships. I'm like, look, relationships like you have to go through things with people, and they take time, and you got to see them multiple times, and there's no hack for relationships. Now, what I've noticed is like, I think you can engage with people for a long time online, and I think a conversation, one-on-one conversation, like is worth years of engagement online. But like for like true relationship to start, like you got to start texting people. And so I do have some really great friends that I've met over the last year and a half on LinkedIn who are really good friends. But like LinkedIn wasn't it? It was like building off LinkedIn and texting, and so I think to your point, like real relationships and trust and these things, like they don't just happen with like a DM or like two DMs. It really just take time still. And so I think like those things are just important to remember. Like big follower counts are great for like free advertising, but like just like true connection and like relationship and referrals, it still takes time. And like I think you can build trust somewhat quick, but it's not. I don't know. I just get skeptical when it's like, again, with like Clubhouse is such a great example because it's so hot, but it's like I hear people like, oh, it's amazing. And I'm like, what conversation? Like, like have you not had conversations with people?
Yeah, it makes me think that there might be a formula, right? not something that we can write down and then pass around and say, okay, you do this, and then you're suddenly going to get connected to people. But the more touch points we have, the greater the opportunities are for us to connect, right?
Yeah.
And, if you're focused on one platform, if that's all you got time for in your life, that's fine, that's cool. But the way that you've worked LinkedIn, for example, and, actually, in reality, when I look at the people on LinkedIn whom I am either closest with or who I know in my network are like would know me and we would either, help each other out or be happy to have a text chain with each other, or just every once in a while, I know for a fact I'm going to get a hello from this person.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do the same. Every once in a while, I'm just going to be like, you know what? Time to check in. How you doing? How you doing, Jim? How you doing, Sally? Whatever.
Yep.
But those people were most likely, maybe online, it's all LinkedIn, but there was an offline element. There had to be, for that kind of connection to kind of stay in my brain. Like it had to happen at some point. Neil Schaefer, great example. Neil Schaefer, he's an author and he's a fairly well-known fellow in social media circles. He wrote all about influence marketing. I've known Neil for 10 years. We've been good friends. We met on LinkedIn and went back and forth on LinkedIn a little bit, but it's like, okay, here's another guy that's interesting. Okay, we have some things in common. But it wasn't until I hung out with him in New York offline at an event that he put together for his LinkedIn network, right? Met him. That was the first time.
It's cool.
Second time, a couple years later in Tokyo. And third, it wasn't until like the third or fourth time that we met, right? Where now, like, we're legitimately friends, right? But it takes a long time and it takes a combination of touch points. So what I was getting at is, if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on, Clubhouse, and if you're on whatever, Facebook, whatever, the more times that you connect with the same people on those different platforms, the likelihood of you actually creating a relationship that transcends those platforms arises.
Exactly.
Right? As long as you're actually interacting with them. So this is where I find Clubhouse to be interesting. So let's get into Clubhouse, okay? There's where you've mentioned it a few times, and people who are listening to this probably know what Clubhouse is. And by the way, this episode will probably air in June sometime.
Cool.
Okay.
So by then it would just be
by
open
then it'll
to
be
everybody.
Dead, or it'll be everywhere. One or the other.
It's sold to
up
LinkedIn.
Or down.
Yeah.
But I think it's a jungle, and I think there is a survival game going on Clubhouse in some ways, but it's little pockets. It's developing pockets of communities, and we'll get to this in a second.
Without a doubt.
But when you look at Clubhouse, right? Like I was invited to Clubhouse by Billy, of course. Billy, one of my favorite people who I never met in real life, but multiple platforms, online, offline connection.
Yeah.
Friend, right? And now I work with him on my podcast. He's a gent. Everybody who knows Billy loves Billy, and there's a good reason for that. But anyway, Billy got me into Clubhouse. Billy got me into a Clubhouse session in which you were moderating. Met you, right? We had been connected on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But then I met you on Clubhouse. Suddenly, we're real people to each other, I think. This is my theory.
I don't know. You seem like kind of a robot to me right now.
But the point is that in that Clubhouse conversation, it was a real conversation. There's no hiding. You get to know each other a little bit, but then we took it offline.
Yeah.
Right. Then we had a conversation after that. So, it's all of these different platforms are just touch points to build that relationship. So I think you're totally right about you have to have that real connection. It takes time. There's no hack. That's the point. There's no growth hack.
There's no hack
to that. But now we're getting now just speaking of Clubhouse though, I definitely want your take on all this because Joel not only is Joel a LinkedIn kind of master in some ways, early adopter on Clubhouse, and there's this group of moderators, and we've mentioned Billy a few times. Billy is one of them. Joel is in this group of moderators who have really created not only a following, but a community within Clubhouse. I personally am having a lot of trouble with Clubhouse because it's just such a time commitment. I mean, I understand it. I don't poo-poo it in any way. It's like, man, I can't spend the time. But, when I'm on and when I do participate in rooms, I don't feel the need to be gathering followers because of that, right? I know it's not my thing right now. I'm not like trying to build a business on Clubhouse. I just want to go and enjoy the conversations, learn a thing or two. So I'm not looking for followers, which
Yeah.
is really refreshing. And it feels, it's like there's a weight off your shoulders. So I'm just going in there being who I am and talking to people whenever I need to. But you are like killing it on Clubhouse. So what is it about Clubhouse that you think is the thing? And where's it going?
So it's funny because like when I initially joined Clubhouse, like I was spending a lot of time on there. I've actually pulled back on my time, but I guess I'm still spending. I would say I'm spending an average of 3 to 4 hours. So let's be like pull
A
it
day or a week?
a day. So
Yeah,
pulling
so
back.
that's like a
But
part-time job.
but I will tell you that there's people who are on there, 12 to 18 hours a day, which is too much. So I'll walk you through a couple things. Like, so number one, I changed my handle, as we've already mentioned, to LinkedIn Legend. So what that's actually allowed is on SEO on Clubhouse, when people search LinkedIn, I'm the second person that shows up. The first person is a friend of mine that I taught this hack to, and he's the number one guy. So
Okay.
and he knows who he is, and he's got like 2,000 more followers than me because he's the first person that shows up.
Mhm.
But what that allows me to actually pick up, I pick up probably 50 followers a day just from that. So little growth hack there on Clubhouse. And someone taught me that early on. So I changed my handle. Then the other thing I did is I just thought like, okay, I think Clubhouse is worthwhile if you're using it like you're using it, which is like you're going in there, you're just meeting a couple people, you're enjoying it. I think that's actually a great use of it. What I see a lot of people's strategy is they have like what they call like, it's like a mod group. So it's like an engagement group. You've got these people you trust, you're all making your own, these rooms consistently and like, but you're in a group, so you have a back channel and it's like orchestrated. And so there's these communities that are just pouring of like these mods.
Sorry to interrupt you, but when you say orchestrated, and for people who are in Clubhouse, they may not know this is actually happening. What is happening?
Yeah, I mean it's the same on LinkedIn if you look at like engagement groups. So you can look at like certain people who have massive engagement, and if you look at like why they got that engagement, it's because off the platform they're in a group with like 10 or 15 people, and they're basically all helping each other out with engagement. The same thing is happening on Clubhouse where you have like groups of moderators, and they all have a big following. And like anything, like the more followers you get, the more likely you to get more followers because
Mhm.
that's what people gravitate to. Like you can trust someone with 100,000 followers. You're not going to trust someone with 10, even though the guy with 10 could be way more successful than the guy with 100,000. Anyway, so you join these groups, you've got these back channels, you're organizing it, and then what happens is you start getting like meta rooms within Clubhouse. And so there's a lot of rooms on like how to be a good Clubhouse moderator, how to grow and so then what are you attracting? Okay, well like 10 whatever 100,000 people are joining Clubhouse a day, and the first room that they see is how to be a Clubhouse moderator. That sounds interesting. I've thought about that. And then you have these like moderators all with big followers, and inevitably they fill those rooms up with 600 or 700 people. They're picking up followers. Now the flaw behind that is like eventually if you're on there to be a financial advisor, if you're on there to be a real estate person, if you're on there for something else, the moment that you stop talking about Clubhouse and you start talking about the thing that your expertise is in, nobody's going to care because you built your following on being a master in Clubhouse. And so like you said, unless you're trying to build a career as a Clubhouse coach, which no doubt people are, is there an opportunity for corporate sponsorships? Sure. Eventually, possibly, if it doesn't get sold off or something doesn't change. And so I think my strategy is like I do tend to hang out in the LinkedIn rooms. Why? Because it's beneficial for me. That's my expertise. But I hang out in recruitment rooms, and I started a club for recruitment marketing. And so I open rooms. Those rooms are a lot smaller, but I've picked up a couple of clients just from that. One or two that have, but inevitably they reach out to me on LinkedIn because they're wanting to learn how they can use LinkedIn to grow their recruitment business. So I think that's like what I've seen is like I've seen number one, a lot of the big people who aren't like, okay, so if you're big off Clubhouse, so if you're like Gary Vee or your Grant
Yeah.
Cardone, those guys are going to pick up followers wherever they go. But the influencers that are rising up on Clubhouse, if you look, it's like they don't have following anywhere else. And so it's like, I get it. Like when you first start getting followers, it's exciting. And so you're like, oh man, I'll spend all my time on here because I'll be an early adopter. The problem is though, is like we talked about earlier, is if you get 100,000 followers, but they're not relevant and they're not like followers that are actually going to push your business forward.
Yeah.
It's a futile plan and it looks good, but inevitably you're going to go, damn, I just wasted like 6 months. Whereas thinking smaller and talking about everything we're talking about, building relationships, like the real key strategy would be to go into rooms or start conversations that are going to increase your business. And even if you get 4 people in there, if those 4 people are buyers, it's more powerful than having 1,000 people in a room that don't care about you and are never going to work with you. So,
well, in my experience, it's about where I am in my life, right? So, like you said, if I go into a room and I've been invited up on the stage by friends who are moderators, and I'll get up on stage and I get 50 followers or 30 followers or whatever it is. I don't have a lot of followers on Clubhouse, full disclosure, because I've only done this a few times. But you get up there and you go, oh, geez, I just pulled 27 followers from that session. My goodness, but none of them are interested in me, right? Because then I'll be like, well, I really don't want to go on Clubhouse to talk about Clubhouse. That's other people's job. I don't want to go on to LinkedIn to talk about LinkedIn, for example, right?
which by the way, I do that a lot
because that's how you make your living.
Exactly.
Like, you are a LinkedIn expert as your service. That's what you offer.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Well, I got to this point where I'm like, okay, you could be known as that. I could be known as that by doing XYZ, but actually my job is in communications now, right? But it's been in marketing and communications my whole 20 years. I mean, why shouldn't I be talking about that stuff, right? So instead of worrying about, because LinkedIn is a tool and it's a channel and it's whatever it is for either my job or my own, my own personal stuff, but it's not the thing, right? It's not what I do. I don't do LinkedIn. I don't sell LinkedIn. So I shouldn't be talking about it on Clubhouse, except maybe as a way to advise, help people share some stories about how I built some specific, networks of mine, or how I was able to, attract certain people or whatever. But as far as like the whole, like, be the LinkedIn guy, that's not me. But I found like a couple of good rooms here and there with people that I know and like and trust, and talking about topics that are interesting to me. So I'd go in there.
Best use.
And, beyond, I would join the stage maybe a little bit if I was lucky, if it was a smaller room. When they're big rooms, I get very impatient. I don't want to wait 35 minutes before it's my turn.
Diminishing returns.
Diminishing returns, yeah. Yeah. But the best room I've been in so far is I just recognized that my experience is in corporate communications and corporate marketing. I have a resume in that. So when I was invited to be a co-moderator with another person who is really an accomplished person in the agency world in communications, we set up a room. We got like 45 people who just wanted to talk about comms.
I love it.
Right? They want to talk about what we were doing. And, we wanted to bring people up and cycle through, because we don't, we were moderating. And my co-moderator, her name is Gay Flashman. She's been on this podcast. She's amazing. Anyway, she's really
I'll have to check out that.
She's jumped into Clubhouse pretty strongly. You should check her out. Gay Flashman. She is. But me and, we did this thing, and we're probably going to do it, every couple of weeks. We'll do this room. I don't know how regularly, because we're both, we're working people. But it was so rewarding. And I realized that it's because I'm talking about things that are important to me now in my day-to-day, but also it turns out I have some experience here that actually might help people. So,
well, that's I think where
that's where I went.
The followership doesn't matter, because it's more in the moment, what is actually coming out of your mouth, and the connection you're making. And to be honest with you, if you actually know people as well, that's really powerful on the platform. So it's Billy. Yeah, Billy is awesome, man. He's gotten 20,000 followers. He's got 12,000 followers already. But it's dude, I know if I hop in a room with Billy, or I'm in a room, or I'm in a room with some of those guys. Yeah, and does he always? No, but that made me think that I'm it's still about who you know off the platform, and what's the relationship there. And I think there's a lot of relationships being formed, but they all have the commonality right now of like, let's grow on Clubhouse, which again, like, it's not like that's a bad thing necessarily, but I think for me, it's like, it's got to be more. And like, I do train LinkedIn, but I'm also a recruiter. And so, like, it is actually helpful. That's what separates me from a lot of other LinkedIn recruiters or LinkedIn trainers is I can meet with an agency owner and say, hey, I sat in the seat. I know what you're going through.
Mhm.
I understand your business. And to your point, like you're talking about communications, like
Mhm.
that's corporate communications, that's a career and a skill that like you can't just fake that. Like you can't just have 100,000 followers on Clubhouse, open up a room on that topic and talk like an expert. And that's again where followers don't matter. It's actually really what matters is the topic and
Yeah.
how much do you actually know. Like, can you have an intelligent conversation? Like for
Yeah.
me, can I have intelligent conversation around what candidates are looking for, how to pursue a candidate, how to message them, how to have a conversation, how to close them, how to sell them? 2 million followers on Clubhouse, it doesn't make expertise. It's just it's fellowship. And I think when I listen to the founders talk about Clubhouse, their vision was not about followers and it wasn't about hype. And to me, like I think they should take away followers, to be honest. And I
Mhm.
don't understand. I think they should have the ability to follow, but I don't know why they need to show how many followers someone has. Like I don't know why that's relevant at all. If the platform isn't even text based, like I don't even know why you have a bio. Honestly, if you really wanted to keep it like
Mhm.
serendipitous and like all to
Yeah.
do with curiosity, why are those things needed? Other than the fact that they inherently know that sheep mentality, and they also know that like dopamine is dopamine, and dopamine's how you keep people on platforms.
Every follower is a hit, right? It's
Every follower is a
this
hit,
is it.
and
It's a
but
hit.
I don't. And I started thinking about this even with like Instagram, Twitter, because I'm on Twitter all the time now, just tweeting out stuff. And I love Twitter because I've only got like 500 followers on there, and it's
Mhm.
hilarious. I get to test out stuff, and I just get to write whatever I want. Nobody cares. A little bit more pressure, I guess, on LinkedIn because it's just more followers or it's just more
Mhm.
work. But I'm like, why do we have the followers again? Like the algorithm could know, like it could still serve and work the same way, but like the only
On
thing I can
Clubhouse,
think
you mean?
about on all platforms, the
Oh,
only thing I can think about the reason that they have it is because that's how they keep people creating on platforms. They show views, they show followers, and you
oh,
become slaves to it if you're a creator in a lot of ways.
it's true. It's true. I mean, how it does allow for that. Is it geometric or algorithmic progression of your content to flow? Like,
But they but
if
they
you
could they could do that because obviously like the algorithm, the goal is to keep you on the platform by showing you
yeah.
what you want to see. So they could track that secretly.
Well,
I
well,
literally can't come up with a reason why anybody needs to see how many people have liked it or how many views you have.
right. Maybe to keep it hidden, like where nobody needs to see it. That would be an interesting experiment to say, look, you can follow as many people as you want, but nobody's going to know how many followers you have or know how many connections you have. Let's hide that number, right? And then that number ceases to be an incentive. But then, though, like yourself, that you've got a lot of people in there, right? It's just like, how do you get to the point where you are, where I want to see what Joel is talking about because Joel puts out great content. I need to follow him because I want to be notified when he has great content, or I want to make sure that he's going to appear in my feed every now and then, right? This is why I follow you, not because I'm going to be tagged or because of I don't know, some way that you'll notice me. I'm following you. I mean, we're connected in LinkedIn. I like the connection is more important than the follow to me, but like we're connected because I appreciate the content. And that way I'm guaranteed that every once in a while, and especially the more I interact with you, that's the algorithm works that way. The more I interact with you, the more your
Exactly.
content's going to be on my feed. But I guarantee I'm going to see what you're up to.
And I
If I
can I
wasn't
can
following you, it
see
wouldn't
that.
happen.
And I can see like I can see where that comes in. I think I'm just
On Clubhouse, though,
I think I went off a little bit, but yeah, with Clubhouse, getting
I'm,
back to that point with Clubhouse,
yeah.
like I'm confused of why they do that because they again, like when I was reading about it, like in whatever July of last year, I remember reading about it and it was like this super secretive, like Silicon Valley, like all these like hot shots, and they got these big influencers,
Yeah.
and they were like, yeah, but we want it to be different, like we want the influencer to look different. And then I get on Clubhouse and I'm like, Dude, it's the same. It's the same engagement groups. It's the same tactics. It's the
Well,
same mentality. These rooms feel awkward. People push in their course.
and that's what I wanted to ask about is the whole dark side of Clubhouse a little bit because look, I mean, you have some of the same people doing some of the same things on a different, just with a different media. Okay, now instead of being asynchronous, now it's synchronous. Now it's like, okay, all right, you want to hear John Smith in real time? It's your only chance today. You got to go check it out. Otherwise, what are you going to do? You're going to wait. What are you going to wait? Wait till he writes an article? Oh,
Wait for
no,
the
I mean,
podcast.
wait for the podcast. You got to hear him now in real time. And there's a certain obviously there's a certain amount of excitement about that for some people, and there's a FOMO that like that's to me is kind of the dark side of Clubhouse is pure FOMO, right? If you miss it, you miss it. There is no like it doesn't exist anymore. There's a great conversation happening on Clubhouse. You're not able to attend, you're screwed. If you think a certain way. But however, if your mindset is a little bit different, it's like, okay, there'll be another conversation sometime, right? And if anything earth shattering happens, we'll hear about it.
So many. I mean, there's definitely cool conversations, right? Like I was in a room. Billy was actually in there, and he's on stage with Les Brown. It's like, and Les is a legend. I mean, everyone's seen his videos. He is like a genuine legend, and the way he spoke was like very. I mean, it was amazing. It was like cool to hear it live audio, and like you're very like just extremely skilled and gifted speaker. I think that moment when Elon Musk is on there, that's super cool. Bill Gates, like those are really cool moments,
Those
but
are nice.
it's few and far between. And what I see is a lot of people who have like courses for 1997 that really it's exploitation of people who are out of jobs is what it is, and it's been like that. Like right now, the easiest way to make $1 million is just to make a course for 1997 and then get in learn how funnels work and learn how to do social media marketing. If you really want to strike gold, make a course on making a course, like that's the gold mine. And I think to me, that's the dark side of Clubhouse. And I think there's, again, like when you hear the heart of like the actual founders, it's really pure and pure intent. And they talk about like, yeah, we never envisioned seeing 30 moderators on the stage. We never envisioned this. We envisioned good conversation. But inevitably it's people figure, oh, it's linked to Instagram. Cool. Now I have another funnel. And it's like a live funnel. And I can just chill on this stage and pick up followers and they go look at my Instagram. And then I've got a bot set up that catches them in my web. And a lot of those people are super smart. And like I love like the intelligence behind it. I just think, like you said, like the FOMO is big. I see people waiting for 2 hours to say something for 30 seconds. And then the mod is just like, okay, great. And moving on. And it's like this weird thing, a state of like power. Yeah. And then you have people who are like coming across like, oh, I'm super authentic. And you're just like, okay, cool. Like, I don't know. You don't really seem like authentic.
And then they tell you something like, look, I will tell you that I'm a sort of deferential person if I, and if I see one of my idols in a room and I haven't really spoken to that person before, I get nervous, like seriously nervous to be like, to start talking. And my first or second day in Clubhouse, I went into a room with this particular person who I seriously admire, and who I've been following for many, many years. And I've spoken to this person a few times. And okay, I'll say it's Cliff Ravenscraft. I mean, I am such a fan of Cliff's, and Cliff is the reason I'm doing my podcast. There's so many things about Cliff that I think are just amazing. But anyway, I go into this. He hasn't asked me anything. Room, first or second time I've ever been on Clubhouse, and some guy in front of me in the queue asked the question I was going to ask, and I was like, oh crap, and I got nervous because it's Cliff. Like, and Cliff is just. If you've ever heard Cliff speak, he is so eloquent and he's on fire. Anyway, he's and you know what? He'll handle anything. But I was like, oh crap. And then he calls me, he's, oh, Daniel, so good to see you here. How you doing? And I was like, oh, I had a question about something. The other guy said it and I don't know what to say. So I'm going to ask you about neuroscience because I knew he was into neuroscience and I am interested in it. But it was like, I pulled it out of like, oh gosh, what can I get Cliff to say? That I genuinely wanted to know, but it didn't really add value to the room. And I felt like really shitty about the whole thing. I was like, I've just taken up 7 minutes of Cliff's time and, anyway, I messaged him somewhere and he's like, oh, don't worry about it. But I worry about it. After that, I just realized that, look, it's ridiculous. What is wrong with me? Go on Clubhouse. If there's a conversation that's interesting to you, then jump in. If it's not, don't just stop volunteering. Don't go on stage just to be on stage, right? That's check your motivation.
Exactly.
So that was a big turning point for me. But the whole, the dark side there, though, is that people will do this. People will get on the stage just to be heard because they need that 3 seconds or 5 minutes. Well, hopefully only 90 seconds, because that's all people generally get a chance to talk in the bigger rooms. But, it gets to be a little bit of, hey, look at me. I'm on stage now. Follow me. And I may not have anything interesting to say, but I'm here. And I know that was not supposed to happen on Clubhouse, but it happens a lot.
And I think it's this switching culture, right? Because it's like I just think like the rise of like influencers and all, and even like just those types of words. I mean, influence has been around
Sure.
for years, obviously, but I think with social media, it's created a market for almost like it's created honestly a market for like weird influence and like influence that's not always based in like the right things, like and
So true.
like I mean, when I think about like how you can get followers, there's a lot of ways that you can get followers. I mean, and I talk about it a lot because I'm kind of like a personal branding coach. But anytime I'm pitching somebody and I'm like, you got to build a personal brand, it's like it creates a certain thought in their mind. And I think, like at the end of the day, it becomes it becomes kind of selfish and it's all about you. And I think of like what typically will work in a video. Creativity works, right? Like there's people who create creative, there's humor, and then it's just like pure attractive. If you're super attractive, you're probably going to do well on a platform like Instagram.
It's true.
TikTok, like that. But like that isn't like influence, and like creativity, it can be influence, but there's a big difference between like just like knowledge and like wisdom, that type of influence compared to the influence that we've created. It's just purely based on like clicking buttons and followership. And so I think it's risen really quickly. And I think like even the fact that like they tried to set up Clubhouse different and it's kind of going that way, or it's like, it's like people put on a tone and they speak differently. And like I speak differently when I'm on Clubhouse, but I'm like I want to be matter of fact and I want to be quick and I do want to help people out with LinkedIn.
Well, there's a difference. There's a difference between being deliberate and careful and being fake, right? I mean, like you can be deliberate and careful and considerate. And look, if I do my podcast here, this is generally what I sound like. But if I sit there and I'm thinking through something very carefully and I really put my force of will into what I'm about to say, I will eliminate most of the ums, ahs, ahas, and I will very likely sound more intelligent. Just like I did right there. But the fact of the matter is I can't be bothered. I want to have a real conversation, a flowing conversation, and think on my feet. And, sometimes I'm just going to go, yeah, right, yeah. And, so if you're being more deliberate and you're being more careful, you will sound good, but you're still you. You're still you.
Again, that's where I think like my approach is I genuinely do help people with LinkedIn on Clubhouse. I'm helping people with the recruitment. I'm trying to have real conversation. When I run a room, for example, everybody knows I'll strike order when order needs to come, but I like it to be more free flowing. If somebody has something to say and it adds to the conversation, great. I'll let you police yourself. If I got to step in, I will. But I think a lot of what I see is it's like 50-50. There's some great rooms. And then I think there's what we're characterizing, which is weird kind of like influence and like these followership numbers. And I see people who are on there 18 hours a day. And I think we're going to kind of move away from these things because I just think like how many followers can you really have to where it's effective? And like,
Mhm.
it's felt like everything's like, it's just always a gold rush. And, like TikTok was like that. Like I'm on TikTok and I just have fun on there. But it was
Mhm.
like, people are like, you got to be on TikTok. And like, part of that is, what I mean, like Gary Vee preached about TikTok for a long time. And I think that like that influenced people
Sure.
to be on there. And but then it's like now it's Clubhouse. So it's that same thing where people are like, well, I missed out on TikTok, so I've got to be on Clubhouse. And they'll talk about like early adopter and you have an advantage. And again, I just think like when it comes to an audience, like engagement and connection is what lasts for 20 years. That's why like Les Brown's huge because it's like he
Yeah.
says the same thing over and over, but he's just like it's like the first time.
Yeah.
Like literally, I swear he on the Clubhouse, he said the same thing that he says like in his videos, but it's like he's just so gifted. And I just think like it's gonna end up being disappointing for people when they realize, and I've seen it already. Like I've seen people with 12,000 followers, they set up a room that's outside of like the how to be a good Clubhouse moderator room. And it's
Mhm.
like the room gets 20 people. And I'm like, I could open up a room about anything and get 20 people. Like the
Yeah.
followers don't matter. It's like the topic and how good are you at conversating? How good are you at actually moderating a conversation,
Yeah.
facilitating a conversation? And same thing with LinkedIn. I mean, it really is the same thing with LinkedIn. It's like I just tell people like it's not engagement and those things. You can game the system. Those things will come through consistency.
Mhm.
But look at where I started in my journey. Like you've got to sometimes take away the motive and you've just got to look at the impact, the connection with people. You got to love it. Like if you're straining on Clubhouse and you're not spending time with your wife or your family or your kids, the hell is that, man? Like it's not life. Who
You're doing it wrong.
you're doing it completely wrong. And it's like, yeah, I've heard people like, well, you got to make sacrifices. And I'm like, I guess. I mean, like, like my wife would like, just laugh at stuff, and she'd be like, "Why are you connecting with those people? Like, while I'm
Mhm.
here, like, I'm the one you should be connecting with." And that's why I've kind of pulled back a little bit from there. And like,
Sure.
I'm on there. I'm on there 3 to 4 hours a day. It's while I'm doing other things. I've actually combined my LinkedIn time and my Clubhouse time, so I'm engaging
Yeah.
with people on LinkedIn.
I will say that's a good thing about Clubhouse. You can multitask a lot of it,
You can
especially
multitask if you're not the
if you're not
main
the sole
facilitator.
facilitator. Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
That's yes. Or if you're just listening, as though if you were just in the audience and listening and being a participant and just kind of enjoying it like a podcast.
Even if you're the one of the mods, like
Yeah.
I can get away with that because like I work with 5 of the mods in a LinkedIn room,
Mhm.
and then I'll be listening, but a lot of time I'm engaging, and I've combined those 2 activities, which has
Yeah.
actually been helpful.
Yeah.
But again, it's just with any of these things, like you said it before with LinkedIn, like every social media is a tool.
Mhm.
And if the whole idea of social is to connect, then I'm not really interested in how many followers I have on a platform. Like I'm a lot more interested in like how many people do I know? Am I
Mhm.
trusted? Am I respected? Am I valued? Like when I meet with
Yeah.
someone offline, can I add to their business? Can I help them? Can I
Mhm.
help their life? I care a lot more about that. Um, that's what life
Someday
is.
there's going to be a quality metric for your network. Like someday, and there might already be, but I don't think anybody wants to make it public, or certainly the people with large networks don't want to do this, because the quality metric would be how many people you have in a function of how many people you have in your network, and how many of them do you really know, and how many of them do you contact, and how many of them do you have interaction with, and how many of them have you actually had, you know, done either business or some kind of other, you know, transaction of some kind, either business or non-business with. You combine all that stuff and you'll come up with like a quality score for your network. And most people who have large networks are going to have a very low quality score. Like it's just the way of things.
Especially, I think I would say that would be true, like for sure within in the business world. And then I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, there's the other side where it's like, there's some video editors on TikTok, for example, who's like it's just awesome, or like you've got YouTubers that just have like awesome
Yeah.
vlogs, and that's like it's a obviously a different thing because it's like
Yeah.
you're there for just pure entertainment. But I don't know, man. I think maybe we've come up with like a really cool like Yelp for like
Yeah, Yelp for
Yelp for
networks.
like business networks to
Yeah.
just like write reviews on people and like actually know like are they like legit or are they just full of
Oh,
it?
that's dangerous territory, Mr. Lalgee. That's
I
no,
accept I
but
accept
like,
payments via Bitcoin, so it's all good.
oh yeah. Well, I would think that that kind of quality network should be only visible to the network owner, but it's something like how good are you doing there, and are you doing good? It's more like that. It's more like, are you doing good, and
Yeah.
are you taking this and doing the right thing with having a network is a powerful thing. It can be.
Yeah.
You suddenly have exposure to whatever numbers of people, and you have to serve them. Like,
Yeah.
that's the way to win your network. That's the way to increase your network, is to serve. And I've learned that more in this year than I ever have before. And you, my friend, are an example of service. I mean, the kind of things that you do every day on LinkedIn, and I do highly recommend our listeners check out Joel Lalgee, and his name will be spelled properly in the title of this episode. But just search for him on LinkedIn. You can't miss him. Look at the content that he's got there. I mean, it's all about fan service, really, and friend service and connection service. It's service. Joel is an engager, and he's not only a connector. He's a connector and an engager. The content is speaks for itself, or the activity speaks for itself. Actually, just check it out, Joel. This has been an amazing conversation. I always learn a lot from you when I listen to you on Clubhouse, or when we talked a couple times we've spoken. And I love what you're doing. Just the mindset that you have, the confidence that you have is inspiring. And one of these days, I'm going to have you on again. We'll talk about confidence, because I want to know how you got yours, uh, and how you continue to be such a driving force for good in the online world of connections. Joel, is there any other place people can find you? We said LinkedIn, Joel Lalgee. Look up, what was it?
LinkedIn legend. Luckily, I'm the only Joel Lalgee in the world. So if you
Okay.
Google
Yeah.
me, you can find me. You can find me on TikTok, on TikTok I basically there's a feature called the green screen, and what you can do is you can take a screenshot of anything, and then you can it kind of floats in the air. And then what I actually do is I take a lot of like business memes from Instagram and I
Yeah.
float them in the air, and I just do a funny face. And I kid you not, some of those videos have had like millions of views. It's
I'll bet.
hilarious. But I'm having fun with it. I make it my own.
Yeah.
Twitter is just kind of my daily. I'm just posting like thoughts on there.
Mhm.
But yeah, definitely LinkedIn is the main platform that I enjoy the most. And then I've started to try and test on Instagram as well, mainly like screenshotting like my tweets, and then I post some of like the family stuff on there too, because like I
Sure.
am proud of family. But as far as like DMs go, probably the easiest way to DM me is actually on Twitter, because I just don't have as much traffic on there.
Mhm.
If you send me a connection request, just say, "Hey, heard you on Dan's podcast. Can I get because I got think 3,600 inboxes, and it's like
Jeez.
it's hard to know what is what." But yeah, man. I try and like with the content on LinkedIn, a lot of it is like I'm constantly like experimenting and testing as well.
Mhm.
So it's definitely like I'm pushing it, like I'm pushing the boundaries of like what's even acceptable on LinkedIn, and I
Yeah.
test. But I also am like really, really passionate about helping people any way I can on there as well. And
Yeah.
that to me is I don't think you can ever give enough, and I'm always convinced like the more you give, the more you do receive.
Mhm.
Maybe not always in the short term, but like in the long term, 100% convinced of that. And that's my goal. And I'm still in the giving season, and I'm starting to get, but I always
Mhm.
know like I never want to get away from just giving. So
Well, you get that for sure. And look, knowing you so far has been a pleasure. I've only known you for, whatever, 6 months or so. Um, and I can't wait for the next 60 years. So thanks, Joel. It's been a pleasure for you to be on the show. It's been a
love
really,
this.
it's been a long episode actually, but I think I've
Been
loved this
great.
conversation. And come back again, man.
I really
Please.
appreciate it.
You got
Anytime,
it.
man. Anytime.
Thanks, brother. If you enjoyed this episode of The Dan Nessel Show, please head on over to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or the podcast player of your choice to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. And please don't forget to spread the word. Thanks for listening.